Welcome, everyone, to the Apex Sunday podcast, where John and I discuss Formula One races, features, and events. And today we're talking about the 2021 Qatar Grand Prix. And John, how are you doing today?
Wonderful.
And how did you enjoy the race?
I loved it from P1 all the way through to the end.
Well, it's a new track, right? And that's always interesting, but it looks like a track killer as well. A lot of, we had that Gasly incident with his wing and then slicing the tire. We had 4 tires go off. And the thought that I had was, those curves beyond the curbs that were causing all the damage. So, drivers should avoid them. Could those be implemented at other courses a little further out so that they're not destroying their wings if they happen to wander out a bit, by error and so forth? But would that be a better way to enforce track limits? Because I understand that gravel traps, the cars can start bouncing and rolling and that kind of thing, and they can't stop as well as they can on concrete. So that's usually that's the reason I've heard that gravel traps aren't used anymore. But, this would be a better deterrent, I think. And it would help if turn 4 in Brazil, for example, would have never happened if those type of curbs were on that circuit. So I don't know. It was just a thought I had, and I've heard others mention it as well. What do you think?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Well, it causes too much damage. The high rate cars, they lose their front wings, and everybody else gets the hydraulics and the aero on the bottom of the car destroyed. And That's huge. That's expensive.
Right.
We need clear penalties on track limits.
That's true. I mean, it's kind of silly, isn't it? Now we got to put up walls to keep these guys in check. It's like, well, if you penalize or not penalize whatever the appropriate measure is appropriately, perhaps this wouldn't happen so much. And I still think that, last race Max should have been penalized, and he wasn't. And sure enough, we've had Lando say, well, if that's the case, then my penalty in Austria was completely unjustified.
Yeah.
And I've heard that the drivers had a meeting on Friday, and Max walked out fairly happy, and the rest of them were all like, we still don't understand what we can and cannot do. So not a very good state for the drivers to be in.
No, not at all. The easiest solution is just to go back to what they used to use for track limits, which was trees. And I think that's a really good deterrent.
Jim Clark would disagree with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that. All right, let's move on to qualifying for the Qatar Grand Prix. So for qualifying, I noticed that Tsunoda had no problem keeping into the track and his line with other cars on the circuit at the time, unlike his Red Bull brethren. So I found that kind of interesting. And then the one-sided conversation with Seidel on the F1 TV was quite fascinating. Eric or Seidel, what do you think of this? Silence, And then it was restored in between Q2 and Q3. So, they have their technical issues at F1 TV. Ferrari's had a lot of trouble. They finished in the points, but they weren't very quick this week. And we had Perez not making the top 10, but didn't really make much of a difference. And of course, in Q3, we had the yellow flag incident. But before we talk about that, anything you want to say about qualifying?
Alonso.
Yeah.
Alonso.
All weekend.
All weekend. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just him. I mean, to look, because of the penalty to Max, which was justified.
Yeah.
Penalty to Bottas, which is justified. Mm-hmm. Do I understand? I completely understand. I don't know if you looked at the footage, but looking at the footage and you watch these guys and they've got a little wee tiny thing off in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, they're being fighter pilots, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
Nothing on the dash. I get that it happens, but at the same time, yeah, they deserve to be penalized. But then you look at the starting grid because of qualifying, which was just mind-boggling. Qualifying itself wasn't all that exciting.
No.
A lot of sparks, and that's about it.
Yeah.
A bit of damage.
And Alonso qualifying 5th, though, is quite incredible.
Phenomenal. What a drive.
In regards to the penalty, it kind of reminded me of the Scott Goodyear Indy 500, where he just kind of assumed he wasn't going to be penalized for something that can be penalized for. And in this case, everyone knew about the double yellows. I mean, it was announced on the broadcast. So why didn't Red Bull and Mercedes side on the side of caution and tell them, you got to slow down? I mean, in the end, it didn't really make much of a difference. But Christian Horner going on about rogue marshals and the system needs to be cleaned up. I mean, this guy, he cannot keep his mouth shut. He can't point his finger. He can't keep pointing his finger at everyone else. It's not a very good look. And I'm very confused because, Red Bull is a very, very good team. They've won a lot of races. They've won championships with Vettel. Mm-hmm. They've got great staff. And, despite their management, I would not mind if they won the championship. It'd be great for all the staff and the drivers and so forth. But their upper management just continually makes these kind of statements that I guess they just don't care how they look. And I don't know. It's just,
I don't know what the change was. I'm thinking the change sort of came along with possibly with Niki Lauda. And that whole, and him coming back in onto the scene kind of changed the tone for everybody. And I know that wasn't with Red Bull, but Helmut Marko, Niki Lauda, same sort of
they're good
process.
They're kind of buddies, aren't they? I've seen them at ski races in the crowd and so forth.
And I think there's been a huge cultural change. I don't think that Red Bull is the Red Bull of old, back in the days of Vettel and Weber and the days when they had fun.
The fun, right? Yeah.
Right. And it's just completely changed. I blame it all on the Spice Girls.
Right. Well, they were the X Games kind of company, and Formula One was, not X Games, a big thing. And I know they're big in motorcycle racing as well, but just the Red Bull F1 management in particular are just, I mean, again, it reminded me of when they were having a hissy fit over the Renault engines and threatening to leave the sport. And I thought, well, what do your employees think of this? Like, like your words mean something. And I know there hasn't been very good management examples in history lately. I mean, it's all been pretty much terrible, especially if you look at politicians, I guess. But that's what they remind me of. Just, blast out whatever is on their mind. There's no nuance. I don't know. It's a big turnoff for me.
Me too.
So if they don't win, I'll be a little bit happy as well. But just because of them, but I'll be unhappy for the people who work under them. So anyways, should we move on to the race?
Absolutely.
So Alonso had a great start. And, when Max passed him, I think he thought, don't waste time fighting a Red Bull at this point in the race. Let him go. I know he defended at the first couple of corners, which was nice, but Alonso in particular ran a spectacular race, and his start was key too, because he didn't lose positions. So until later when Max passed him, and Hamilton had a great start as well. But the Stroll, Tsunoda, Bottas battle, that was pretty good. But I will note that by lap 10, Alonso was 20 seconds behind. And last podcast, we talked about fast track with medium to fast corners and a long straight will favor the Red Bulls and the Mercedes. And that was on example and extreme, I would say. They were much, much faster than the rest of the field, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I think, in regards to all the controversy over racing, I think the racing in this particular race was very clean for the most part. And Kimi was a prime example of that as well. So that was really nice. Ocon had a spectacular race as well to finish 5th.
That was the highlight for me.
Oh, yeah? Right.
Well, his dicing with Perez. We haven't seen dicing like that in a long time.
Yeah, it was interesting because, when Alonso requested and the team requested to try to hold off Perez as long as possible. Everyone knew that would be close to impossible at the end of the straight. But afterwards, he slowed him down very well. That was very, very impressive. So, and that team, that's the kind of team spirit I like to see in this sport rather than, Red Bull.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought it was, sorry?
Sort of the opposite of back in the day of Nico and Lewis battling it out.
Yeah, because that Nico's championship year, he did not look happy, which is not the way to win a championship, but very toxic between those two, that's for sure. And, Mercedes, I don't think will ever do that again, although we'll see how Russell does and see if that ruffles some feathers. And the final thing I thought was very odd was Di Resta, Crofty, and Brundle going on about Bottas coming in to get that extra point for the fast lap, but he was out of the point, so it doesn't count. So did they just forget, I guess, or something? So
yeah.
And then as we just discussed earlier, the damage to the cars and, the tires blew up.
Huge damage. I mean, Leclerc needing a new chassis. That's, my God. It's And that is, that was the problem with the tires, because we had a big tire issue here, didn't we? And they came out and said, tire manufacturer came out and said, this is not anything but a two-stopper. A whole bunch of people went for one-stoppers, and I like that. I like their guts in doing that, and it made things interesting.
Yeah, you gamble, you either win or you lose, and most of them lost, but Alonso didn't. And that was great. And even the safety car at the end, or the VSC, not sure that Perez would have caught him. He wouldn't have gotten by him. Yeah,
he might have gotten near him, but I mean, this is wily old Fernando. I mean, he's not going to get anything but the widest car you could ever imagine.
And I thought it was really interesting. People are going on about he hasn't been on the podium since 2014. Of course, he left the sport for 3 or 4 years. I can't recall, but he was very happy to be there. And he said, I got back into F1 in preparation for the new rules. So, the drivers are looking towards the new rules as well. And Renault, now called Alpine, but it's Renault, they should be able to build a very good car and a good engine. And I hope they do next season, because I want to see Alonso battling all the time, because he's just a great racer.
Yes. And if you could pick the guys to be dicing, he's definitely there. And Lewis, because they're just so wise.
Yes.
They are very wise and very mature and very un-Max-like. I found it. I find his driving style a little bit obnoxious still, and rightfully so. He came in like a bull, pardon the pun, and you don't lose that. That's who he is.
Yeah, he's such a spectacularly talented driver, and he's so fast, and his car control is incredible. He just needs to become a better racer, like I said last podcast. And again, I was reminded, we looked at Ocon finishing 5th here and that great dice with Perez. If you recall, a few years ago, Max punched Ocon after the Brazilian Grand Prix because he blamed him for blocking him and scratch. But Lewis looked at that and said, I wouldn't have taken it that way and, driven the corner that way. And that's what Max is missing. And again, Red Bull is doing nothing to help him in that regard.
Right.
Maybe experience will, and maybe if he loses the championship, it will. But so far, it doesn't look like it.
The problem is he isn't paying the price.
Yeah,
when you do those incredibly dangerous things like weaving back and forth, when you've got rocket ships like these cars, and you jog to the right, I'm going to go on the left, you jog back again, I'm into you. Yeah. That's how it works. And that is phenomenally dangerous. There's that, and then there's just the sheer, I don't know, stupidity in driving people off the track. Yeah. That's what got him where he is today. So, yeah, hopefully that can change. The other thing that came out was what happened with McLaren. and Danny Rick. I don't know if you heard what happened to Danny Ricciardo, but Danny,
he had a Gimli glider incident kind of thing, right?
He had a computer problem.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Gimli glider. You know that,
that
airplane, but they actually lost fuel. They actually ran out of fuel and plummeted to the ground. And fortunately, the pilots saved everyone's lives. But yeah, they couldn't. I wonder could they have taken a risk and just ignored that sensor because it was wrong afterwards, because going that slow, he wasn't going to score any points anyway. So
right. What's that risk? If you aren't going to score points and if you're going to DNF, yeah.
Maybe there's a mechanical reason. Maybe if they run out of fuel, it damages a lot of things or something. I don't know, but it was a curious thing to happen to Rick. And that's why he was so bad in that race. Although throughout the qualifying, he just didn't seem to respond to this circuit.
No.
So
unlike and Alonso just absolutely adored it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the only guy. I mean, in free practice 1, he actually said on the radio, "This is fun."
Yeah.
When was the last time you heard an F1 driver say that?
Said he could drive there all night, basically. Yeah. So, yeah, it was, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be in regards to, I mean, yes, most of the passing or probably all the passing was in one corner, but it was, interesting to see them take those fast corners and drive through it properly and so forth. So I did enjoy the race, but yeah, it's not the most optimal under the current rules. And I don't think we'll ever see this circuit again for F1, because when we discuss news, or we can talk about, we just mentioned this now, and it was mentioned in the broadcast, coming back in 2023, but not to this circuit, to either a purpose-built circuit or a street race.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it would have been interesting to see the new rule cars there, to see how they do in medium and high-speed corners following each other. But there are other circuits like that, so we'll see how that goes. Anything else about the race? Yeah, the race, I'm going to give it a 7. I'm still, because it was a one corner thing, but I did enjoy it. What about you?
I'm going to give it an 8, and I'm only giving it an 8 because I saw some real dicing, which was Ocon and Perez. I thought that was a lovely battle, and the start was so fresh, the Gasly right there,
I guess we should mention Stroll too. He's only scored 2 points in the last 5 races, but he finished 6th in this race, so much improved there. And Vettel 10th, so they didn't do too badly.
A big relief for Lance.
Yeah. He said he didn't really like the car all weekend either, but in the race he seemed to do well. So, what about your driver of the race? I'm taking a guess that's the same as mine, but go ahead.
It's got to be the old guy. Yeah, I'm getting tired of him being called old, but he's only 40. But yeah, it's got to be Fernando.
Burn, indeed. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just incredible. I mean, Valtteri was doing very well before his puncture as well. He didn't get off to a good start, and we saw that, or we heard that message from Toto, go out and pass them, Valtteri, or whatever it was. And at first couple laps he didn't, but then he just really took off. And, unfortunately, I think he's probably the unluckiest F1 driver of this season, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Especially with that car.
Yeah, I know. He should. I mean, he's probably going to finish 3rd in the championship, but, he could have had a lot better year. So, all right, let's move on to the news. We already discussed the Qatar race happening in 2023 and beyond, but not at this circuit. Mm-hmm. And we discussed the drivers coming out of the Friday meeting and saying they're all confused, except Max wasn't. So the rules are still up in the air in regards to racecraft on the circuit. We'll see if that gets resolved, or if, the officials start. I do think Christian Horner does have a point. It is confusing to everyone, I think, right now. So that has to be cleared up. But I read an article that makes me think that it is 2025 rather than 2026 for the new engines. And Vinod is saying that the engines will be so different because of the new fuel. That's going to be quite a challenge. So that may open some doors for certain teams as well when that happens.
I hope so.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Do you have anything else in news?
No, I don't. Other than the points, and we're so close.
Yeah, that's spectacular.
Coming down to the last races, and it can be anybody's.
Mm-hmm.
Not anybody's, but
one of two.
Yes,
right?
One of two.
Yeah,
and it's the same with Alpine scoring all those points. So much for the Ferrari McLaren battle.
Yeah, that's over, and the AlphaTauri Alpine battle is over as well.
Yes.
But the Mercedes Red Bull battle continues for both the teams and the Drivers' Championship. And like I said last time, I just hope it ends cleanly. I hope everyone finishes their races. No one has an engine blow up or something, and we get a nice battle. But, well, we just have to wait and see. I heard sorry?
If there's going to be any noise, it's going to be because Max is going to do something very silly.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the next race is in Saudi Arabia, and it's a new circuit as well, Jeddah. And people are saying Mercedes is going to do well there. So, and also the race after Abu Dhabi, they've changed the layout. And so it's kind of newish for parts of it. So it's going to be quite exciting to see who wins this championships or both the championships.
They haven't been right. They haven't been right in all this season, saying we're coming into a Red Bull track, and then Mercedes dominates, and we're coming into and vice versa. So
right, yeah, I think both cars will do well. And I do wonder if Max had qualified in pole and had got a good start at this race, if he could have kept ahead of Lewis. We'll never know, but
I don't think so.
No, you don't think so?
I really don't think so.
Right.
I think that Lewis got out front and managed the car and was driving at 85-90%.
Right. Right.
And managing the gap. Seriously, that's what it looked like to me. Because when he wanted to turn it on, he could turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of points there where he's worried about the undercut, so he got back on the loud pedal and the gap.
That's true. That's true. So, yeah, because when Max got up to second, Lewis was about 4.5 seconds ahead, and that quickly ballooned up to between 8 and 10 and 7, sort of. So that does say that Lewis was managing it. So yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Saudi race is the 3rd of December to the 5th of December, so a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to it because usually at this point in the season, the championships are already wrapped up.
Absolutely.
So they're not this time. All right, John, we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
Bye.